Hello again. It's time to take a quick overview of the Lens Flare filter, new in Silhouette 7. And the Lens Flare is found in the light category, and it's designed to create that sort of flare of light that you would generally see when you point a lens at a bright object. And we can use them for realistic effects or for a more stylized and dramatic effect. Directly in the viewer, we can interact with the position, which is the position of the light source that we're working with, and we can change the pivot, which is sort of the center point of the flare, where the flare pivots around. You can see that there. Now, because the Lens Flare is a very versatile tool, a good place to start off with is actually the presets down in the bottom here. And the Lens Flare actually ships with 331 optical lens presets. And just as with all the other presets, we can filter these out into the category that you might potentially be looking for. In this case, we're going to have a look at the stylized category, and we're going to go for a really big lens flare, something that is going to be difficult to ignore. Maybe something like stylized 87 here. We can see that the pivot point for this lens flare is actually in the top left-hand corner, which makes for a very interesting look there, like that. And we can just use that as a good starting off point. If we want to make any changes to this flare now, all I have to do is come into the top of the node and just click on Edit Flare, and this will spark up the Flare Editor interface. So here we can see all the elements that go to make up our shot. And in this preview viewer here, we can move this around, see how stuff is going to be reacting. We can even remove or add things to the shot as well. So I think maybe one of these chroma rings is a bit too big, a bit too busy. I can just disable that. Actually, let's keep that one there because I kind of like that one there. And if I wanted to maybe add another element to it, maybe some chroma bands, I can bring that into the mix as well. And I can reposition where this is going to sit in the mix just by clicking and dragging. So if I come over to the right-hand side in the parameters now, I can then change the scale of this, maybe scale it down a little bit there, take the chroma off so it's not quite as saturated, and just make any small changes that I need to. Maybe just spin that around just a little bit there. And when I'm happy with all of that, I can just come on and apply those changes, and we can see those within our effect here. Excellent. If we take a look back at our shot again, though, we can see that the shot is moving. So we actually want this flare to be moving along with it. So we get a bit more realism going along with this shot. And there's a couple of ways of doing that. One of the ways is just by coming into the parameters and simply keyframing the position down here. The other way is to connect the lens flare to a motion tracker. If we look at our tree, you can already see I've got my tracker applied to this clip, and all it's doing is just tracking the rearmost element that I can get there, which is just that window area. So I've just done a quick planar track on that. So to come back into the lens flare, I'll just connect that tracker to my lens flare, come down to the transform and choose my Windows track, and then just offset that the correct amount, so that it fits in, there we go, into our back window there. And we play that through, we'll have connected that motion from the motion tracker to our lens flare. That's looking pretty good now. The only thing that's ruining it is obviously when the flare goes behind this bit of equipment there. I'm not even sure what that is. Some big industrial something, probably something that's dumping more stones down onto this conveyor belt. When it goes back behind that, the lens flare should cut out. And again, this is something we could keyframe. We can keyframe the brightness down here. But instead of doing that, we can use the third input on the lens flare, which is our occlusion. And I can connect this to another clip that has an alpha channel on it so that we can base the occlusion off of the alpha channel. But in this case, I'm going to just attach it to the clip itself. And instead of the alpha channel, I'm going to select luminance. So we have a look at the occlusion here. I can then just ramp my threshold up. I'll turn off invert for a second, and I can ramp my threshold up so we can see where it is that the occlusion is going to happen. Let's take a look at the output there. And let's pull that back. And you can see as it disappears behind the piece of equipment, it starts getting dimmer before disappearing completely. And now when it's about there, I can just tweak it a little bit so it disappears properly. Just need to tweak that up just a little bit more. There we go. Cool, so if I play that back now for one final time, you can see we have our lens flare that's based off of a preset, but then customized to how we want it. That's taking its motion from a motion tracker, so we don't have to keyframe that. And it's adjusting its brightness based on an occlusion layer, which is the luminance value of the clip itself in this case. So we don't have to keyframe anything there. And that's a brief overview of the lens flare node in Silhouette 7.